Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, WeatherTech, Hum by Verizon, RockAuto.com, and State Farm. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Thank you, Alec Webb. Welcome, everyone, to MotorWeek Podcast number 174. I'm John Davis, and joining me today at MotorWeek World Headquarters is writer-producer Brian Robinson.
Hello, John.
Road test producer Ben Davis.
Hi, guys.
Online content coordinator Greg Carlos.
That's me.
And video producer and editor Joe Ligo.
Howdy.
We got a lot to cover. We've got cars, a few questions. Even we're going to see if anyone has a rant or a rave today. And let's start, though, with some of the cars that we recently took down to our winter testing facility down in Roebling Roads near Savannah, Georgia. Ford Mustang GT. It had the Performance Pack 1 on it. Let's go around the table. What did you think of it? Brian, what is the Performance Pack?
Just add some performance-oriented stuff like Brembo brakes, some nicer wheel and tire.
That thing did have brakes for days, didn't it?
Stuff like that.
Spoiler.
There's a new, and then what's
There's
new?
actually a 2 also.
Right. What's new this year is optional MagnaRide suspension, which comes standard in Performance Pack 2.
It certainly was, I thought, probably the most secure Mustang on a track I've driven since maybe the last Shelby. I mean, it was pretty impressive.
Absolutely. For that track, and compared to the other hardware we had there, like Lamborghinis and Porsches, I mean, it felt great on that track. And as Ben said, the brakes were really good. The new transmission, it's easier to use. Gearing was perfect for the track. For being just a GT Mustang, not like a Shelby or anything else, it was pretty phenomenal, really.
Greg?
Yeah, I was really happy with it. I drove the this Mustang when I was in Malibu along with the Expedition, and I drove a 10-speed automatic there. And originally I was kind of bummed that we didn't get it on the track just because I wanted to try a new transmission, especially one with so many gears on the track. But then as soon as I started driving this one around, I just forgot all about it. I thought
it was so much. I mean, just the interplay with the car was terrific.
It's still a new 6-speed manual transmission. I mean, because it had to account for the extra torque that the engine's putting out. I thought the pedal placement was great. I was nailing all of my downshifts in it. Like Brian said, the gearing was a little bit odd to me. It was good, but I always felt when we come onto the straight, I was waiting longer to get into 5th gear. It just seemed like a really tall gear, and it just revs a lot longer than you think V8 should. But it sounds great, and really just a nice package, I thought.
It does sound good. It sounds good whether you're inside or outside the car. It does sound real good. And from a streetable perspective, I did some drive-by shots with it for the camera. It's so easy to drive for being a manual transmission because you're pulling into parking lots, turning around, driving back in front of the camera and that kind of thing. And I could have driven it all day. There was no fatigue from that, even in stop-and-go traffic. And we had a couple other manual transmission cars, and I think that Mustang might have been one of the easier ones, if not the easiest, to just drive around town.
We also had 2 other cars there that basically could be considered direct competitors, or at least in the same genre. The pony car,
all very different takes on the
very
same
different.
theme.
And let's switch and talk about the Camaro ZL1 1LE. Brian, give us a quick primer on what the 1LE does to the ZL1.
So we've had regular Camaro 1LEs, which is basically just a handling package, and then we've had the ZL1 there at Roebling last year. Now you can add the 1LE package on top of the ZL1, which is really a bunch of aero treatments and some suspension tweaks. And it was super fun on the track, no doubt. Probably one of the most capable cars we had down there.
Really solid. I mean, amazingly so.
I can't say without driving them back to back how much better it was than the regular ZL1, just because that one felt pretty amazing too.
But I think it's not a direct competitor to the GT with the Performance Pack. It's a couple of steps above. But what struck me was, since they went to the ATS chassis, just how solid. It just doesn't feel like your traditional pony type car or like any Camaro I'd ever driven before. So, anybody else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's a car that's easy to drive fast. It's intimidating to look at, but as soon as you get your first lap in, that intimidation goes right away because of that extra aero. And it's not often on a car, at least in my driving capability, that I can tell the difference in aerodynamics. But this thing over the ZL1 was absolutely more locked down and tied to the track. And I even noticed it going down the straight. I remember hitting closer to 170 at the end of the straight in the ZL1 last year. This one I couldn't quite get there because it had to have been, and there are different factors, but I have to attribute most of it to the extra aero. You just couldn't get up to the top speed, but you make up for it in the corners.
Not just chickening out, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was hitting all my same braking points, but yeah, that was a car that I really enjoyed every lap I had in it.
Is it twice the car that Mustang GT with the performance pack was? Because it's twice the price.
Right, yeah.
Well, the engine certainly, it's got 200 more horsepower. Yeah. That alone might be worth the
a good piece of that.
For sure.
Yeah, Benny, for the record, the price on the GT starts around 35 and the ZL1 starts around 70. So that's the.
I didn't get as much time in it as these guys did, but
it was still pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the absolute flip side of the coin was the Dodge Challenger SRT Hellcat Wide body. So it's here you've got basically, how can I say it without? It's a straight line car on a racetrack. And I thought it was pretty impressive for what it is. Big, heavy machine.
The Hellcat certainly was, and then the Demon more on top of it.
It's the Demon bodywork.
This is an attempt to make it less of a straight line car and more of a road course car due to wider tires and some suspension tweaks
in the front.
And also new electric power steering, which I think may have had a bigger difference than the wider tires. It definitely felt better on the track as far as the grip level, and but there's still so much power there. You're constantly trying to keep control of the car still, which to many people could be fun.
I have an interesting story.
It was a thrill ride. I mean, it was kind of like being in an amusement park. It was like that thing would do just about anything you wanted to.
It actually teaches you a lot to the driving
car control.
Dynamic. Exactly. You understand weight transfer and things like that. So for sure.
Go ahead, Ben.
Well,
Ben's got a story.
First lap of the day. At the very first session of cars going around the track, it was probably like 40 degrees.
2-mile road course, like 9 corners, 40 degrees.
I'm gingerly coming out of a turn, feathering it out to the rumbles, and all of a sudden the thing just leaves the track on me and just doesn't want to stop in the sand.
Sprouted wings and wanted to fly.
It's just flying towards the woods. And I've been off there before a couple of times, but, man, that definitely redefined fear to me, yeah.
Anyone from FCA listening, it did not go into the woods.
Warm up the tires is the key here, children.
What impresses me is I shot exterior footage for the car for the road test, and how much mileage Dodge has gotten out of that bodywork, because it's almost the same as it was from like 2009, and people still love it. I still love it. I was shooting it, I was thinking, how are they going to... eventually they'll have to change it. But
that's certainly played into it because there are so many people who love that style. I can't tell you the amount of people who see that and say, like, that's their dream car as a Challenger.
You compare it to how much the Mustang has changed since 2009, and I don't know. I still love it, but I do wonder how much longer. It is so big.
It's big. It's lower, longer, wider. It's the American car dream from the 1960s brought back to life.
The doors on that thing are like billboards. They're enormous.
It's comfortable to drive.
A few new decal kits can carry that thing another 5 years.
Some
stripes.
Bold new graphics.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the one new car that's on our list today that we did not have there, and Greg has the experience in it. It's the all-new, and really I think that name that applies, Jeep Wrangler for 2018, the most new Wrangler in several decades.
And this one actually does go into the woods.
This one does. You want to take this one into the woods at a nice pace, or on some rocks, as I was able to do with Jeep. They invited me out to Tucson, I think. I can't remember. There was a big rock pile out there, so we got to test some Rubicons going up and down some serious off-roading. It's compared to some other events that I've done. But yeah, so when you look at it, it's not exactly drastically new style, and I think that's the way that Jeep wanted it.
Yeah, they learned
Same
their
thing
lesson
with the G-Wagon
Cherokee,
from Mercedes.
I think,
you don't want to change too much of an icon, but they did make some changes. If you look closely enough, they paid homage to the CJ where they cut into the slotted grille with the headlights a little bit. I think that's a pretty nice touch. They've widened some things out. They've lengthened it a little bit. Big news is in the powertrain department. There's a new 3.6-liter V6. And then they have the turbo 2-liter 4-cylinder, which I actually thought was pretty nice.
That's not available to the public yet.
Not yet.
You were able to drive it at the event.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, the 3.6 is the standard.
Right,
yeah. 3.6 was definitely more powerful in terms of horsepower, better top end. But that 2-liter is really torquey, and I like that. And it's something I've gotten used to now with the advancement of turbocharged engines. You're just used to torquey performance.
You can only get the 2-liter with an automatic, though, which it is a new 8-speed, right?
Yes,
yeah.
New 8-speed.
So, but, off-roaders want that manual.
Is it more civilized? Because I look at it, and I sat in it, and you've got a much nicer interior. You've got all sorts of features like much easier to use fabric tops. I mean, like hugely, like not even comparison to the old snap and zipper.
Blind spot monitoring.
Blind spot monitoring. Has it lost its appeal by becoming more of a mainstream vehicle?
That is a good question. I've never been a huge Jeep Wrangler person, but I could see there's definitely an argument there that could be made to say that it has lost its edge, because you get in and it is like what would be considered luxury 10 years ago. I mean, you got big screens, you got all this technology, but I like how they still kept some of that Wrangler DNA inside, maybe even to a fault at some point. They have like exposed screws and things.
Still take the doors off, still lower the windshield.
Yeah, you can still lower the windshield, right. But there's things like the heritage old images of the Willys Jeeps on the shifter, which is a little
corny stuff,
a little hokey,
they love that stuff.
Which you don't need to do on a Wrangler. You can do it on a Compass, sure, but on a Wrangler, I mean, it is the real thing. That is it. It's the real McCoy.
I'm sure being friendlier to drive or whatever point we're trying to make, I don't think most Jeep buyers, most Wrangler buyers aren't what we think of as the traditional Wrangler buyers. I mean, since they went to 4-doors, I mean, it's just people using them as a regular SUV.
4-doors
it's by far the dominant body style.
Yeah. Here's what they should do. I agree with you 100%, but why doesn't SRT just bring out a hardcore, straight-up, off-road, rock crawl version of the Wrangler?
Yeah, like a next-level Rubicon.
People who say they're, claim they're that kind of Jeep guy can just look at it, say awesome, and not buy it.
So, and there's more engines on the way, right?
It's got to be a hybrid.
Actually, technically, I think it's a mild hybrid system now.
It has the 48-volt electrical system.
Yeah, but eventually there will be a plug-in hybrid, so they say, and then
plug-in hybrid
Eco Diesel will be coming down the road pretty soon.
For Europe consumption and Chinese consumption, they'll need it. That this is now Jeep is FCA's global brand.
Do you think it would an electric motor would be great at off-roading because you can kind of have more control over it, maybe? Like if you're going real slow?
Yeah, you only have limited use of it, before you got to recharge it.
Yeah.
You could definitely afford water real deep with it.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to worry about snorkel anymore.
Yeah. As long as electrical components don't do well underwater.
As long as all those
aren't submarines electric? No.
I was going to say, as long as all those wires are coated and covered and waterproofed.
All right, we digress. Let's move on to our viewer question. Jack from Marietta, Georgia. The temperature here usually gets about freezing during the day, and water from the melted snow freezes at night, creating black ice. A road that appears to be dry may have patches of ice, making it dangerous. Will self-driving cars detect these patches of ice, and what is their strategy for safety on slippery roads?
That's a good question.
That's a great question. I will tell you that most of the semi-autonomous systems that we're driving now have not been very good at detecting black ice because they're using primarily cameras. I would suspect that a total self-driving vehicle would be using not only exterior sensors like that, but wheel sensors that would detect rotational speeds. And you have to also remember that a purely self-driving car will likely never exceed the speed limit or be very close to it at all times, where an awful lot of problems that people get on black ice is when they're, driving fairly recklessly or as if it's dry. Yeah. But it's a great question. I'm sure that's one of many obstacles that has to be surmounted. So far, I don't think they're there.
I thought about this on my way in today, and I was thinking a lot of the cars we have now all have temperature readings in them, and if it's below 30, they warn you with a little warning on there. It says, look for
ice. If it's below 40, they start
warning. They say, look for ice. But then the other thing I thought of is, if these cars aren't just using cameras, but some kind of LiDAR or lasers or that kind of thing, or some kind of infrared vision, then they can probably see more than your eyes can see, and they can say, "Oh, that patch of road is a lower temperature or something." Now, I don't know if there's cars out now that do that, but in the future, and then also we've known for years that ABS and traction control respond way faster than a human ever could, anyways. So I think they may not be there yet. But I think all it takes is one smart company to kind of connect the dots between better cameras than human eyes and better response time than human reactions, and it won't be long before it's a non-issue.
But when you hit black ice, as all of us have done, you're just driving along and you think you know what you're doing, and all of a sudden, one side or the other of the car is out of control. So it's one of those situations that machines may well be able to do it better than we ever could because they'll simply have more information.
I think salt is the thing that worries me because it obscures road markings, it covers up sensors. I think salt
the
is
semi-autonomous systems that we've tested now don't work in those conditions.
Right, because you get the freezing days with no snow where you just have dry salt all over everything and lane departure quits working and everything quits. So that I think I'm much more worried about residue than I would be the ice itself.
Residue.
Well put, Joseph.
Thank you, Jack. I hope that probably doesn't answer your question, but I hope you enjoyed. We enjoyed you asking it. Let's put it that way. Rant and rave. Anybody got anything? We just came back from a long road trip. Anything that you noticed along the way that particularly stuck out?
Another Ben story.
You laughing at my speeding ticket?
Ben.
Barely a speeding ticket.
Well, now look. In your defense, you were using the radar cruise control.
Set at 80.
And you were following another vehicle.
I was.
A much bigger vehicle.
At 80,
and you got the ticket.
And I got pulled over for 81, and I was going no faster or slower than the car I was radar locked to that was in front of me, which happened to be an 18-wheeler.
And you were in the back, right?
No, I was driving.
No. Oh. You were the last vehicle in the chain?
You're driving from the backseat.
Yeah.
So
I honestly don't know if there was a car in front
pickings?
of him. Yeah, I was.
Yeah, but it's not like it was an assault-covered, I'm sure, gray CX-9, right?
Yeah, and it was only doing 81 and a 70.
Well, it was at Virginia, right?
Yeah.
It's all about the revenue.
It happens to all of us.
Just be lucky you're not in jail.
It happens to all of us. It's a reminder. Speed limits are signs that are to be heeded one way or the other, depending on your personal choice. All right, I think we're going to wrap this podcast up. I want to thank our audio engineer, Jim Bigwood, our podcast creator, Bob Mixter. Around the table, our writer-producer, Brian Robinson, road test producer, Ben Davis, online content coordinator, Greg Carlos, video producer and editor, Joe Ligo, myself, John Davis. Thank you very much. Remember, you can catch MotorWeek on public TV stations around the country, also on the Velocity channel. Our website, by the way, motorweek.org, under the About the Show tab at the top, has a new station finder program that works much, much better. Stick in your zip code. You'll get the times and dates of all the stations in your area that carry us. Till next time, thanks for watching and listening to MotorWeek. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, WeatherTech, Hum by Verizon, RockAuto.com, and State Farm. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at MotorWeek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.